Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the World Prep stream. World Prep stream, Adventure Prep stream. I don't have all my assets in here. Wait a second. What happened to my thing? 1 second, everybody. I'm gonna work on getting this right. My picture will probably lag while I do it. Whoa. That's better. Okay, I probably still have some lag. I'm gonna leave and come back, and hopefully that will help. 1 second. Okay, how's that? Let me know if there's any delay. For some reason, that wasn't synced up. What's up, David? I knew you'd be here. How does the picture and the audio sound and look? Everything okay? I was a little worried that it would get kind of messed up. My machine is not great for streaming, so sometimes it gets a little bit confused. How's everybody doing? It is Tuesday afternoon. It is time to do some adventure prep. Yeah, I took the day off yesterday. I was out of office and went and did some hiking, which was nice. But now I'm back to work. I'm back to tweeting, and I'm back to doing stuff. There was, but it evened out. Cool. That's great to know. Yeah, so now I'm back in office. Last week was a lot of games. I think technically it totaled out to 9 games last week, which was a lot of games. Fun, but a lot. And I basically exhausted most of my prep for those games. Thankfully, I'm not running anything this week, so I have some time to catch up. But the main thing I was... of course you can't, right? The main thing I was excited to work on was this game. So I'm calling it the North Trembles is my homebrew title for it. Because I find that doing that helps me get away from the idea that I am running that particular game. And especially with internet-prone players, it stops them from Googling the adventure and trying to figure things out about it. So by giving it an alternate name, they don't really know what to look for. But we've had 2 sessions of that game, and they've gone really, really well. We had one session that was a little shorter, and it was just kind of an introduction to the world and the characters, and they kind of went on their first adventure. Now, after the second episode, which we ran on Sunday, they are kind of up to their waists in this dungeon, and I can't describe how cute these players are. So there are 4 of them, 4 11-year-old boys. And they have never played D&D before, but they've done that thing where they've read a lot of the books and then kind of dug into it and tried to figure it out. And they're just so curious about how role-playing games work, and they're so earnest. It's such a pure experience playing with these kids. I play with a couple different groups of kids, and some of them are a lot more madcap and a lot less they're obviously passionate and excited about the game, but they don't have the same buy-in that this particular group has. So they're very concerned with their backstory, and they're very concerned with their characters and their abilities and how things work and the world and the story. So one of the things I baked into this dungeon that was really fun was it's a little elementary. I probably wouldn't use it for an adult group, but it kind of just as an example of how dungeons aren't necessarily just rooms full of monsters. The kind of backbone of this dungeon is about this diary that this character was writing. And they're basically ripping these pages out and scattering them across the dungeon. And so as the characters go through, they find fragments of this diary. But unlike a normal audio log in a video game, because they're pages, you will get one of them will have a sentence fragment that it ends with, and then it'll end with a sentence fragment and begin with a sentence fragment. So the idea is that as you pick them up, you can kind of put them into order. And I kind of thought the kids would sort of ignore this, that it was a little too esoteric, but they immediately latched onto it and were very quickly putting the pieces together and figuring out the story. And they were really, really excited by that. They cared more about that than they did about fighting monsters or doing any of that stuff, which was really cool to see. So I want to kind of keep rewarding that by making the lore an important part of the game and kind of puzzle solving and figuring out what happened in these ancient mysteries. So that's largely what we're going to talk about today, but there are some kind of immediate direct problems I have to solve going forward as well. So we're going to kind of split the difference and talk a little bit about kind of ancient past and history stuff, which we've talked about a little bit on this stream, as to the background of what Storm King's Thunder presents and how I want to play with that. But then I also kind of want to talk about the immediate aftermath of once they finish this dungeon, where do they go next? So just to review, Let's look at Adventure 1 here on our document. So we went with this. We had brainstormed a different thing about some Ettins and a painting, but we decided instead to do this. The characters are tasked with clearing out an old nearby keep. As they go there, they're observed by other creatures. Yeah, I should talk about that too, because this happened. Orcs, goblins, you name it. During the clearing of the keep, they face a small force of orcs. If they kill them, it makes negotiating with the orcs that much harder later. Once they've cleared out the keep, their watchers take possession of it. So what happened was they did encounter these orcs that were camping out in the keep, who had been scouting for a new place to live. They talked to them, and they managed to negotiate with the orcs rather than beating them in combat. They basically just negotiated and got a natural 20 on persuading them to leave, so that way, you know, the players could take over the keep instead of the orcs. So it was cool because they negotiated with the orcs, but it kind of closed that plot. I don't really have a good way to bring the orcs back in. They did make reference to the fact that they were driven out of the north by a bigger threat, but the party didn't really engage with that. So I could maybe involve them in one of the other two adventures coming up. That might be an interesting thing to do. Maybe as they're traveling between places, we can see the orcs on the move. But it didn't quite pan out in exactly the way that I wanted it to, which is fine. Funny, I actually forgot to reference the sandwich shop that Brooke was all about. Oh no, I forgot about it. But that's okay. So they explored around, and we ended the session with them basically meeting the boss of the dungeon, this specter, an elven ghost who is doomed to stay here with her garrison in this keep and kind of be reborn night after night, night after night after night. So the dungeon is all figured out. I have that ready to go. I can complete that. We're playing again this Sunday, and I feel like that will probably take a good chunk of the adventure, but I want to have a good sense of, like, where are we going from there? I know it in, like, loose tones, but I want to figure out a little bit more concretely what do the next couple of sessions hold for the characters. So we talked about this before. The idea is that when they return from the dungeon, having cleared it out, they discover a cloud giant castle that is hovering over the town and dropping boulders onto the buildings, and descending down to collect the Nightstone. Now, David, obviously you know this. This is straight out of Storm King's Thunder, right? This is kind of the inciting incident. I don't think the characters are present for it. I mean, they might be, but they don't know anything about Nightstone at that time, as Nightstone doesn't mean anything to the characters kind of as presented in the adventure. That's obviously different with my party. My party is from Nightstone, and they've even interacted with the stone itself. The way I flavored it is that, like, if you put your hand on it, you kind of just, like, see stars overhead. But what it is, or why the giants want it, I don't know. And again, I think that's kind of a big misstep that this adventure takes, is that, like, you have this inciting incident that functionally doesn't mean anything. Like, it doesn't go anywhere, or it's never revealed later, or anything like that. So that's one of the things I want to solve today. I want to figure out what is going on with the Nightstone. Why do these giants want it? Who are these giants? What is their goal? Etc., etc. So I'm going to look up what the Cloud Giant situation is like in Storm King's Thunder, because I actually don't know it too well. Yeah, it's thought to be like a week or so after. Exactly. I know. I feel bad about the sandwich shop. I should have remembered. Hopefully Brooke isn't here, so she won't be too offended. But I want to look up these cloud giants, because where we are, let's talk about this maybe first. Where we are is that we've talked a little bit about the kind of political situation with the giants. That Astoria was this great giant empire that was ruled over by Emperor Hecaton, and the idea is that because they live forever, like, he is still the leader of the Storm Giants, even though, you know, it was 1,000 years ago that this empire ruled over this area. To kind of give it like a fairy tale feeling, right? That, like, these are the same characters. It's almost like this Arthurian story of this one giant who ruled over this whole part of the world. The empire has since crumbled, but it's still that same guy in charge. To have a kind of a continuity, rather than being like Hecaton's descendant, it's like, no, it's that actual dude. And all the giants paid fealty to him, and even beneath the giants, if you want to kind of keep that ordning feel, you know, elves and humans and dwarves and halflings and gnomes and dragonborn and whatever else were all kind of swore fealty to Hecaton. But But then the Empire crumbled due to various, insurrections and whatever it is. And he kind of retreated back to Maelstrom, where he dwells with his family, and they sort of rule over the seas. All these things happen that kind of happen in the book. Queen Neri dies. She's very kind and sympathetic to the small folk. She's found dead. We were going to maybe get rid of the Cult of the Kraken, even though I love Krakens, and replace it with Imrith and her agents and the Cult of the Dragon, because we have some, like, Tiamat adjacent plot stuff with the players anyway. And then basically there's this, like, King Lyrian struggle between the three daughters, Sarissa, Mirren, and Nim, right, of Hecaton, and who's going to rule. Hecaton flies into a rage. He wants to kind of basically reconquer Astoria, and then he vanishes. And so that's kind of where we're at now. The idea is that he's given specific instructions to the various giants in the Sword Coast, or whatever, right? Whatever region we're in, to kind of go out and try to retake Astoria and reclaim the land from the small folk. Because he blames them for Queen Neri's death. So he's like, well, fine, we will rule them with an iron fist, kind of a thing. So to me, then, the giants aren't striking out in like a bid to seize as much territory. Like, they could still be, but I like the idea that they aren't direct orders from Hecaton, that they still answer to him, even though his empire is broken. He is still their sort of like lord and master. But so I don't know what the deal with the cloud giants are. I kind of want to check that out, because that might help us figure out why these cloud giants would steal this stone. So let me look here in this massive document. Castle of the Cloud Giants. If you have any insights into the Cloud Giants, David, feel free to throw them out there. I had in my game as the Giants used a power source for a cloud, but yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, and it's something like that, right? It's I like the notion that it's like an artifact of Astoria. I think they specifically mention in the book. So something along those lines. I'm glad you came up with something or thought of something, David, because again, it's just not presented in the text. So let's look. For as long as giants have walked the world, cloud giants have been one step below storm giants in power and influence. Now, with the ordning dissolved, a few cloud giant nobles have seized the opportunity to rise above the storm giants and thereby fulfill their lifelong dream of becoming the true, undisputed aristocrats among giants. I kind of think that's cool. I like the idea of that most of the sort of lesser giants follow orders, right? They don't really have the power to challenge the storm giants, but the cloud giants are the ones that maybe could. So I think we will keep that idea of some of these cloud giants maybe seeing this as an opportunity, to turn on Hecaton. And not much, because they went to the hill giants. The cloud castle looked like a mess to run. Yeah, you know what? It probably will be. So one such noble is Countess Censuri, who believes that her destiny lies buried in the past, waiting for her to unearth it. Censuri's ancient ancestors, anticipating the fall of their great empire, reportedly hid their magical knowledge, and wealth in vaults and left markers for future generations to find them. The greatest of these troves was a cache of dragon magic, spells and artifacts plundered from the lairs of powerful worms. Censuri wants to find this cache, vroom vroom, and use her newfound power to destroy her ambitious rivals and convince the rest of giant kind to kneel before her. Censuri believes the gods will reward her appropriately for doing so. When that day comes, all other cloud giants will thank her for doing what they could only dream of. Okay, that's kind of neat. So she's trying to collect these artifacts, right? This dragon magic. Boy, muscle cars. She wants to find a motorcycle gang. An ancient, gigantic motorcycle gang that she will use to dethrone Emperor Hecaton. So that kind of works with the Nightstone, right? Which, again, it feels like what they're intending, but, maybe it will come up. I'm not really sure that it's that relevant. After using telescopes to scour the land below for clues, she's come to the realization that her maps are woefully out of date, She hasn't found a single marker pointing the way to the trove she seeks. When a curious and danger-prone bronze dragon named Felgolos paid her a visit a few weeks ago, she played the role of a benevolent host. She tricked the dragon into helping her, and when its guard was down, captured it and imprisoned it, When the adventurers come knocking, Censuri is in the midst of torturing the bronze dragon for information, hoping it knows where one of the ancient Astorian markers might be. The dragon's roars of pain can be heard for miles. So in this part of their mission, the characters travel to Lin Armal, Sensori's cloud castle and meet the Countess and her family. The Countess shares the place with her castellan, so this is kind of like her people, Crisaro, her younger brother Count Thulin, and her twin children Alastra and Kaltar. The castle can be anywhere you want. If you have no particular location in mind, assume it's hovering 1 mile above the Evermoors. So they're looking for this conch of teleportation that King Hecaton gave to Sensori, so he can use it to travel to Maelstrom, Hecaton's undersea capital. There's a catch. The conch is hidden inside a Liaman secret chest created by the Countess, and only she can summon it. Okay, that's cool. So that kind of tells us what we need to know, right? That this Countess Sensori is planning to use this opportunity to overcome and like overthrow Hecaton. So like she's kind of a claimant, right, for the throne. None of the Storm Giants know that, but she is trying to accumulate power in order to challenge the Storm Giants directly. But she's maybe trying to do it on the sly. Okay, so let's write a little bit more history here. The history of the Nightstone. So I really like the idea that it is an Astorian artifact, which again I think is implied in the adventure, but just they don't execute on it. Let me just search for Nightstone just in case they have anything. Nope. All right, they don't care. We also have Zephyros running around here too, because he's also a cloud giant. So it sort of feels like we should use that, you know, if he's around. Okay, so let's see. History of the Nightstone. I think it's an artifact of ancient Astoria. It's sort of like current power. Like it could basically not be being activated properly. Allows the viewer, allows anyone who touches it to see a night sky. It could be a particular night sky. It could be any night sky that they wish, right? You could put your hand on it and then wish, like state a date, and it shows you the stars, right? Like it has a very astrological kind of a thing, right? Or astronomical thing where you can like see the stars. It's basically like a telescope, but you can do it any time. That's its current power. I kind of liked the idea that like if it's embedded in the ground, right? That if the giants lift it, that it is something else underneath. It's not just a big rock. It's like a, because there's like the Worm Skull throne, right? Like that's a thing in the adventure. It could be that we make that connection, right? We could say that like the Nightstone is actually the Worm Skull throne. There's something kind of cool about the idea of the characters at a distance seeing the Cloud Giant castle like picking up the Nightstone, and that they had always assumed that it was just like a boulder, but actually it's this like other artifact, boom, right? And that the stone is just the base, that when you pick it up you see the throne, and they're like, what is that? And then it gets carried into the castle, right? So like that's kind of a cool idea. I don't know what the Worm Skull throne does in the context of the adventure, but let's read about it. So it was built by dwarven gods, a symbol of dwarven power and pride for ages untold. The throne hovers a foot off the ground, then is a massive thing made of polished obsidian. So that would kind of work, right? Like, oversized feet, the impaled skulls of 4 ancient blue dragons is pretty ghastly. Runes glisten in the carven obsidian, winking to life with blue energy when the throne's powers are activated. After the fall of Xanatar, the Wormskull throne fell into the clutches of less honorable creatures. Adventurers got it. Sold to the storm giant Neri for a considerable fortune. Neri had the throne magically enlarged and gave it to her husband, King Hecaton, as a gift, along with one of the ruling scepters of Xanatar, which she found in a wreck at the bottom of the trackless sea. Only a creature attuned to the ruling scepter can be in possession of it. So yeah, you could do something like that. It could be that this is the throne, right? This is the ancient throne of Astoria. And for whatever reason, Hecaton lost it. And it was like buried here or hidden here, and he doesn't know that, right? But Sensori does, and so when this happens, she's like, finally, this is the time to take it out of hiding, and she grabs it and pulls it out of the earth. But the thing she doesn't realize is that the throne is bound to the ruling scepter, right? And that only the person who has the scepter, presumably Hecaton, right, can use it. I kind of think that's cool. I don't know that it was made by dwarves. I think it was made, maybe you could say it was made by dwarves and it was given to the giants as a gift. But I like the idea of it, that like there's a very clear parallel to me between the fact that it's like this throne that the giants have, and that it is made out of dragon skulls, specifically blue dragon skulls, and that the villain of the adventure is a blue dragon. Like, it feels like you have to line those two things up. And maybe, you know, it does. Maybe Imrith has some plan for the throne. You know, it would help if I ever read this adventure. Never came into play, but Imrith did steal the rod, meaning the Storm Giants lost it. Okay. Interesting. So, yeah, then you get this interesting thing where, like, it makes Sensori a lot more important as a character if she has the throne. But, yeah, she wants it because she has some personal motivation to get it back because, you know, it's her ancestors whose bones are in the throne or whatever, right? Yeah, I like the idea that it floats. But it's that the stone, the Night Stone, is just the base of it, right? That it's got like a half circle. It's flat on the top, and then, you know, spherical below, and then the throne sits on top of it. So when it's in the earth, it just looks like a big dome. But then they're able to like float it out and like respin it back up, and then they take it up into the castle with them. So, the throne of the Emperor of Historia, right? The throne of the Emperor of Astoria, it is it's hidden, it's lain unknown for 1,000 years here, hidden in Nightstone. Hecaton has long lost control, or lost knowledge of its resting place. But, because, yeah, if I'd been thinking, I would have made the dungeon that they explore, not this keep, but like the ancient ruins of Hecaton's castle, right? That like Hecaton would have had a castle, like a flying castle, like the Cloud Giants that crashed here. You know, the question is like, how did it get here? Why is it here? It makes sense that it would be like an Asturian ruin, but they could have just fled. It's just like, why would the one throne... It could have been like shot out of the sky or something, right? And it just rested here forever. Yeah. Yeah, he had to like retreat or something, and it was attacked, I mean, by dragons, right? Like, I like the idea that Astoria fell because of repeated dragon attack, right? Like, one of our big themes is this war between dragons and giants. Vroom vroom. Because we don't have Rise of Tiamat as a backdrop, you know, we can kind of say the dragons are in whatever position we want them to be in for the purposes of the story. But Countess Sensori... Does Sensori mean something in, like, Japanese? It sounds like a Japanese word. I feel like I've heard that before. Countess Sensori, the Cloud Giant leader, knows where it is. Cool. Hecaton lost the throne when Astoria fell, but held onto the ruling scepter. He's long searched for the throne, but never found it. With his disappearance, Imrith now has the scepter and seeks the throne, but the throne is in the clutches of Countess Sensori. Yeah, cool. I dig that. If Imrith has the scepter and the throne, it changes things. That throne is powerful. So I don't think she has the throne. I think she has the scepter. I think we have split those two up. So yeah, let's look at the powers of the throne. Any creature seated on the throne can hear faint whispers in Draconic. the whisperings of the 4 blue dragons whose skulls adorn the throne. Although powerless, these spirits try to influence the decisions of the throne's master. That's cool. So yeah, again, it feels like this kind of weird, like, war trophy, right? Like this vaguely genocidal, like we killed these blue dragons and put their skulls on our chair. You know, it has this kind of Thor Ragnarok, how did you get to have an empire of giants without murdering people? And, you know, blue dragons aren't particularly great, you know? But that doesn't necessarily mean that makes it okay, right? I like that neither of the two empires or the two big powers are, like, really that sympathetic. So the throne has 9 charges and regains all expended cantrips daily at dawn. A creature that sits on the throne while attuned to a ruling scepter in its possession can harness the throne's properties, which are as follows. The throne gains a flying speed of 30 feet. Sure, so yeah, you can fly it around. That's cool. Both the throne and the creature sitting on it can move through earth and stone. Ooh, that's crazy. Okay. As an action, the creature can expend 1 charge to cast lightning bolt. That's cool. The mouth. I was just going to say, it's got to come out of the mouth of the dragon, right? As an action, the creature can expel 2 charges to cast a Globe of Invulnerability spell. Sure, so you can't be targeted by spells. As an action, a creature can expend 3 charges to create a spectral image of an ancient blue dragon that surrounds both it and the throne. Okay. At the end of each of the creature's turns, the spectral dragon makes 1... Sure, so you, like, summon a dragon. Wow, okay. Pretty powerful. So, oh, I see. So there are 5 ruling scepters. Interesting. I might change that. Unless it's like... David, is it plot relevant that there are multiple... Sarissa, yeah, that's a type of spear, I'm pretty sure. It's like an ancient Greek spear. Question, David. Do you know if the other rods, like the ruling scepters, are involved in the adventure, or is it just the one? Like, would it damage the story as much as we've already damaged the story to say there's only one ruling scepter? Because I kind of like the bad guy has one and this other, like, maybe potential ally has the throne, right? Like, rather than having, like, a bunch of ruling scepters. In fact, it's never been recorded or sung of among the dwarves or any bards or storytellers, and it can't be discovered with an ability check. Characters who want to destroy the throne... Yeah, I agree it's more dramatic to have one. Yeah, cool. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. When destroy the throne, must go on a quest to learn the method for doing so. The throne's destruction triggers an explosion as shards of obsidian fly out in all directions. Yeah, cool. Okay. So, the thing with the throne is that it's... Yeah, cool. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Great minds. So the thing with the throne that's interesting is that it's powerful, obviously, right? Very powerful. And that in and of itself isn't nothing. But I kind of think it has to have more value than simply, you know, its powers. I think its powers are important, but I think what is more important is, like, the symbol it represents to the giant people. You know, it's like the person who's on the throne is the real emperor of Astoria, right? If you have the throne and you have the scepter, that's what makes you the emperor, right? Maybe not anymore because, you know, the empire's been shattered for so long. But if Sansuri could get her hands on both of these things, then she would rule the empire. If Imarith could get her hands on both of them, then see, that's the thing. That gives Imarith, like, a goal. She's maybe trying to, like, play off of the various factions to get information from them and, like, pitting the sisters against each other, and she doesn't like Sarissa and whatever else it is. But what she actually wants is the throne and the rod, and she has the ruling scepter, right? Because she presumably took it off Hecaton. So the scepter has existed in the royal family for so long. It's been passed, not for so long, like Hecaton has held on to the scepter, you know? Yeah. He's held on to the scepter, which I think is cool. Hey, what's up, Swargula? Thanks for coming. Yeah, we had a chat today on Twitter. It's nice to see you, dude. Yeah. Focus everything on Storm Giant Corner. That's why all the big players are trying to win fair with Sarissa and wait for weakness. Yeah, I think that's cool. I like that. Oh, we didn't do the giant Gjallarhorn thing. That's a bummer. We should still do that. Okay. But that would have already had to have happened. Yeah, that doesn't work because we have like these orcs that have already been displaced by giants. So that would have had to have happened already. Damn, I wish we had done that. Dumb. So what do we say here? I think we say that never found it. With his disappearance, Imrith now has the scepter and seeks the throne, but the throne is in the clutches of Countess Sensori. The throne and the scepter together dictate who rules Astoria. Without one, or without both, you cannot rule the empire. Hecaton never had both, and thus lost his claim. Now, the race to claim the empire lies on the shoulders of whomever can collect both MacGuffins, right? I like that. Okay. Hey, what's up? Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. That's cool. It's nice to meet you, Swargula. Swargula? Let me know if I'm saying that right. Yeah, season 2 came out 2 years ago. Yeah, it's on the channel. Go check it out. It's a great. I love season 2. I think season 2 is a big improvement on season 1. Thanks for coming out. Yeah, we're talking about giants right now. Big old giants. Great. So Sensori has like, so the thing would have been blown relatively recently, right? This like big horn. But he's gone now. So she's arrived, she's tracked down the Nightstone. She knows where it is. She pulls it out of the village and she drops some rocks on the town to make it look like just kind of a random attack, right? And she steals the Nightstone. And then she flies off to go study it. So I don't think that when Sensori takes it, that she knows you also need the scepter, right? Like in order to command the throne. So she thinks that just having the throne is going to give her the right. As soon as she studies it, then she learns the truth of it, right? The idea of the bronze dragon is interesting. I don't know how I feel about torture, but the idea of her having a dragon prisoner is cool. Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, is there... What's interesting about this is that... Yeah, is that in the characters' backstories, relatively recently, there was a hobgoblin, or a dragonborn, excuse me, a dragonborn commander. I took the idea of the Red Hand of Doom and plopped it here. That was basically besieging the town. And the hero's first adventure, we didn't play through it, but canonically the hero's first adventure was basically defeating the leader of this army, right? This dragonborn warlord. Throsdak, I think, something like that was his name. And he had these 4 daggers. This was one of the players' ideas. And they each got one of the 4 daggers. And I said, okay, cool, yeah, they look like dragon heads, right? So one of them is black, and when you attack someone, you can deal extra acid damage. And one of them is blue, and it deals lightning damage. One of them is white. I don't think one of them is blue. I think one of them is white, and it deals cold. One of them is green, and it deals poison. And one of them is red, and it deals fire. So the thought being that Imrith has the other dagger, right? And when they see her, they kind of make that connection between the two of them. She has the blue dagger. So what I like about that is the idea that, like, it almost implies that Imrith found out where the throne was, because she potentially was involved in sending this army to attack Nightstone, but she got thwarted, and so Countess Sensori got there first and grabbed the throne, right? Like, while Imrith was still kind of scheming. So what that implies is that she knew where it was, right? So she does know that it exists, but now it's in Sensori's hands, and she has to find some way to get it away from Sensori. So maybe she sends a dragon to clutch it. Oh, cool. Swargula. Awesome. Maybe she sends a dragon to go kind of steal it back, and the dragon gets captured, and we can do some of that stuff. Okay, yeah, that's cool. But that's all way down the line. So all we need to know is that the underside of the Nightstone has the Wormskull throne on it, and they pull it up and the players kind of get a glance at it as it's like beamed up into the storm giant or the cloud giant castle, and the cloud giant castle flies away. Cool. Then basically what the party is confronted with is this stream of refugees. So all of these people come pouring out of Nightstone, right? NPCs that they know, characters from their background, and they kind of ask the party what they want to do next. So the difficulty here was that I had kind of originally planned on having the orcs come and occupy the keep, right? But the way the party negotiated with the orcs was that they basically convinced them that, like, this is our place, go to Chult, which is where one of the characters is from, way to the south, and there's a place you can live. And so the orcs went to go report back. These scouts went to go report back to their tribe about that. And so I can't really have them occupying the keep when the characters return, because it sort of invalidates the natural 20 they got on their persuasion check to convince the orcs to leave. So it makes sense that they would just, like, send them back to the Night Keep if they managed to, like, pacify the place and lift the curse. But there's no dramatic question that's posed by that, beyond just the fact that, like, okay, we have to lead all of these people there now, right? So maybe then that adventure is less about someone is already at the keep and more about how do we, like, corral these people and the conflicts that arise from trying to do so, right? How do our various NPCs that we know in the town react to that? So maybe let's brainstorm some of those ideas. So the party must escort, let's see, to collect the Nightstone. So they would technically, the sandwich shop is demolished. The obvious answer is to escort the people to the Night Keep, which is the castle that they just cleared. The keep they just cleared. Otherwise, they could potentially take them to a nearby village, of which there are two. Of which there are two. Golden Fields or Tribor, right? Okay. So regardless of that, I think that, like, I want to list the handful of NPCs. Each character has, like, an anchoring NPC in the village, and I want to come up with, like, a little mini conflict for each one of those NPCs. Something about traveling that's difficult, or something about this, or something about that, right? That, like, give them a little bit of narrative for them each to engage with as they move overland. So we have Beldroth, Archduke of Rasan. We have Nestor. We have Lady Belladonna. And we have Lanoy are the four NPCs. So, Beldroth, the Archduke of Rasan. One of the characters in the party is a high elf wizard and a noble whose character name is just the Duke of Rasan. So Rasan is I then made Rasan the, like, the region that the adventure takes place in, and he wanted to be basically the son of the person in charge, right? So then Beldroth became his father, a high elf wizard that retired to basically retire from adventuring to kind of found this little duchy. They are very kind of gregarious, and they're very proud of their son, and, very fascinated by the idea of, like, of their son growing up to be an adventurer just like them. And they're very, like, got all of these great things that they've done. The question is if he is a powerful adventurer, right? Oh, you know what you could do with him, actually, that might be kind of interesting. He's like a high-level wizard is the idea, right? And he's kind of the mayor of the town and sort of the lord of the surrounding province. If this flying castle shows up in this town, right, and starts dropping boulders on these buildings and, squashing the villagers, you could do an interesting thing where Beldroth, the mayor, the Archduke, and one of the PC's fathers, they see him fly up and start attacking the castle, and then he gets captured or kidnapped or defeated, right? Like, the notion of you thought your father was super powerful, and he is, but now he's in danger. So I kind of think he has to be involved in the defense. he could just get like swatted out of the sky by like a lightning bolt or something, which is fine. But I kind of prefer the notion that he gets captured. Like he flies up there and you see him flying around, and then he gets attacked and he falls into the castle and he vanishes, right? Like he's now a prisoner of these floating of this castle, right? Flies up. And what I like about that too is that then it gets rid of the high level NPC whose job it would normally be to save the party, right? That guy is now out of the picture, and what's better, that's a hook you can use, right? Sansuri has a Beldroth, and maybe instead of a dragon, right? Beldroth is the one that Countess Sansuri has captured. And she's like torturing him for information about the Nightstone because he has it, right? Obviously, you knew this thing was here and he doesn't know anything about it. So when the Cloud Giants attack, Beldroth flies up to the village's defense, hurling magic. He is bested and falls into the keep, disappearing from sight. The castle flies away, and the Duke is bereft of a father. Countess Sansuri questions her new prisoner about the Nightstone. Maybe he knows something about it, right? Maybe Beldroth knows something about it. Maybe he's not ignorant, right? That's interesting. Okay, so that's one of the NPCs. So that's not really a conflict for the character going forward, but I like that it immediately creates a conflict in the party that, like, presumably that means the wizard is going to want to go off and rescue his father, but it should be very abundantly clear that if his father was so easily dispatched by these giants, that they are in no position to go rescue him, right? Okay, so Nestor is an old cleric. He's this old cleric of Shavras, the goddess of the river, just some goddess, an elven goddess I made up. And he has raised the current cleric character. His name is Nestor Relit. Yeah, one of my players used a character name generator, and they got like the most boring like character name generator name. It's Tune Relit, which I think is a really, like, meh name. But what am I to tell this 11-year-old that, like, hey, think of a better name? You know, so Tune. It's like TEU-NE, Tune, Relit? Relit? I don't know. I don't like it. I really think it's a bad name. But, like, you know, what can I do? He's 11. You should let him have whatever name he wants. So Nestor, the kind of the plot thread with Nestor right now is that we're kind of joking about, like, you know, the character doesn't have any parents because his parents died in a fire, and it's like very dramatic. But Nestor is old. He's really old. He's like in his 90s, right? This super, super, super old cleric, and he's been kind of pushing the party to he's kind of pushing his charge, Tune, to leave, right? And like, hey, it's time. Like, you follow the river god. It's time to follow the river downstream. Like, I have taught you all I can. You know, kind of a classic Obi-Wan sort of a character. So when he last went to see him, Nestor was asleep. He kind of lives in this little boat. Nestor was asleep, and Tune just left a note and departed and didn't tell him he was going on another adventure. So I kind of like the idea that he doesn't get another chance to talk to him. That it's up to Tune to run back into the village and find Nestor, right? He's on a boat, so you couldn't do a thing where the boat gets struck by a boulder because then he would just sink. He's on a boat in the middle of this river that winds through Nightstone. So I like the idea of Nestor doesn't evacuate, right? That like he stays in town because he's old and he's bedridden, and Tune has to rush back into town and rescue him and find him. And it's kind of up to the player to remember, oh crap, Tune, right? Or oh crap, Nestor. See, I just think Tune is a really yucky word. So I think the plot then is that like Nestor doesn't evacuate. Oh, maybe like a boulder shatters the dock and sends his boat floating downriver. Or up against the bank. So you can get that moment when he runs into town and he goes to the spot where he expects the old boat to be moored, and the dock is shattered with a boulder, and he doesn't see the boat anywhere, and he has to search again, right? Like ramping up that tension. When Tune finds him, he urges Tune to leave him and follow the river. It's up to Tune what he does. You know, does he drag his sort of grandfather out of the boat and bring him along? Does he listen to his wishes, right? Like, it kind of creates this character conflict. Yeah, that's cool. Okay. And then, you know, then if you have him and he's like really old and he's infirm and needs to constantly be taken care of, right? Like, I like the conflict between, you know, what you think you should do, like helping this old man, and the burden of how hard that is, right? That, like, it's not like it's just this consequence-free, easy, like, I'll just carry you along with me thing, right? It actively, Nestor is a burden on Tune, and Nestor is telling him, leave me behind, like, you don't need to do this. And so then it becomes about what does the cleric believe in? Does the cleric believe in Nestor's wishes, or does the cleric believe in helping people even when they don't want help, right? He kind of puts him in a moral dilemma. Okay, Lady Belladonna. Now this is interesting because it's kind of the opposite problem. So one of the characters is an orphan. It was very much like, my parents, bleh, right? But I was like, okay, but you have to have somebody in the village that you relate to, right? And the idea is that he has kind of an antagonistic relationship with someone in town. That there's no orphanage, but there is a noblewoman who's like famously childless, and she takes in children and raises them, right? Kind of like an orphanage. She has like a dozen of them at a time, you know, lost children that come to her or whatever it is. And she is believed to be this like good-hearted woman in town. The secret, of course, is that she's a night hag. One of the fun things about running for younger players is that you can use really obvious names and symbolism, and they don't pick it up. Like Lady Belladonna, like clearly Belladonna is nightshade, right? It's a poison, but they're not gonna think about that. You know what I mean? So little things like that are fun for me because I can just be lazy in a few areas. But the idea is that she's a night hag, and that kids that stay with her never exactly reach adulthood, right? No one is like 100% clear on how many kids she has at any given time. And, you know, she kind of works them, and they help her around the house, and sometimes she loans them out to families to help them with things. But she's careful to keep everything kind of moving and rotating. She claims that, like, people adopt them, or when travelers come through, they take the kids with them. But basically, there's, like, a room that she takes them to when they get to be 10 years old. And then they just vanish, right? No one knows what happens to the kids. Presumably they're eaten or something like that. I don't know what happens to the kids either. But this character, Charlie is her name, is the only orphan to have escaped Lady Belladonna. So she ran away when she was 10. On her 10th birthday, she escaped, and she's been kind of living on the streets of Nightstone ever since. Lady Belladonna can't do anything about it, because if she does, it kind of reveals, like, well, wait a minute, why is it important for you to get them back? You know, and Charlie doesn't know anything, but the notion is sort of that they have this kind of unspoken rivalry between the two of them. So we've had one scene with them where the younger orphans then like idolize Charlie and kind of like look up to her, and she had a scene with them, interacting with them, and then we kind of like down the street on her porch had Lady Belladonna appear, again disguised as like a pretty noble woman, and summon the children back, and the two of them had a look, right? There was kind of like a dangerous, don't mess with my business look. So presumably then Lady Belladonna is among the people who are fleeing the town, right? And she's got all of her orphans with her. So ostensibly, she used to kind of be in her fortress, in her seat of power, in her noble manor, but now she's been kind of dethroned from that, and there could be something interesting about, like, does Charlie confront her? Is there some kind of a confrontation between them? So I'm trying to think of, like, what is the conflict with this hag now kind of like forced to go on the road and live like a refugee as after her house is destroyed? Like, does she continue to keep up the guise? Does she try to kind of get back at Charlie? You know what I mean? Like, is there, I could see her being sort of the voice of opposition, right? That like whatever the party votes to do, Lady Belladonna opposes it, right? She doesn't want Charlie to sort of get her way. I kind of like that. So yeah, what if we do a thing where Lady Belladonna is somewhat out of her element. On the run with the rest of the refugees. She represents opposition to the party. With Beldroth gone, the town, the party has no champion among the townsfolk. She argues with whatever decision they make and seeks ways to undermine the party. She's a pillar of the community, however, and any overt move made against her goes ill with the rest of the villagers, right? They can't simply attack her. They can maybe accuse her of the terrible things that she claims to do, but they can't simply, like, you fight her, right? Even if they did, they would discover she's a hag. I might have her be a different kind of hag depending sort of on what level the party is when they confront her. A night hag, I forget its CR, but it's not nothing. Might be 5. Is a little tough for them right now when they are, still first level. Let me see. So, night hag. I think they're like 5. But I could see, we could have it start with a sea hag, and then a green hag, and then potentially a knight if they get high enough level before they have to deal with her. But yeah, I like the idea that, like, if it doesn't, what the party wants to do doesn't actually matter to her, she will just contest Charlie at every possible interval. So if they say, let's go back to the Night Keep, she can say something like, that place is haunted, how do we know that? How could it possibly be safer? We should go to one of these other villages. If they say, let's go to one of these villages, she should say, no, then it's too far, the wilderness, blah, blah, blah. Like, she's just there to prove an obstacle to the party, rather than being, even reasonable about any of that stuff. Yeah, Night Hag is 5, so that's a little tough. Sea Hag is 2, and Green Hag is 3. So, sea or green, depending. If we're lucky, it'll be night by the time they kind of confront her. Okay, that works for me. She's the voice of the opposition. And then we have Lenoy. So Lenoy is the father of one of the characters. We have a wood elf monk character that wanted to be like an outlander. They'd come from somewhere far away. So I said, okay, you came from this tropical region to the south called Chult, right? And they traveled overland for a long time. They've journeyed very far to be here. And Lenoy is his father, kind of like a monster hunter, cool edgelord guy. He doesn't live in the town. He lives on the edge of town. And he has always sort of distrusted the townsfolk and is only staying here because he thinks it's good for his son to have some sense of normalcy. His son's name is Lethar. So Lenoy specificically distrusts the rest of the party. He thinks that they are dangerous. He had an instance with his wife, Lethar's mother, where she ran off. She sort of abandoned the two of them. And so he is very suspicious of forming ties because he's sort of previously been hurt. So I have described him as being suspicious of the rest of the party. So I like the idea that Lenoy represents, what responsibility do the adventurers have to these townsfolk? He represents look out for yourself, look out for number one, right? So maybe he's only voicing this to Lethar because I don't think he would trust the rest of the party. Lenoy is the constant reminder of how vulnerable these refugees are. They are too many, too slow, too defenseless. By sticking around and helping them, they'll only get themselves killed. Or Lethar will only get himself killed. Leather. When I was talking to the player about the name, he was like, I like it because it kind of sounds like leather and it kind of sounds like Thor. And I'm like, cool, my 11-year-old player named his character Leather Thor. you know, you do the math there. I didn't say that, of course. And helping them, Lothar will only get himself killed. Another thing that was great about this party, as a random tangent, is that with younger players, I generally don't do death saves. I just kind of say like, oh, your character goes unconscious, because death is kind of a bummer, right? Especially for like a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old. But and I was planning on doing the same thing with this group, but when someone went unconscious, they kind of asked like, what happens now? I'm like, well, here's what would normally happen. We're not going to do that. And the players convinced me like, no, we want to do death saves. Like, that would be cool if my character died. And I was like, oh, I mean, okay, great. Like, I was excited about that. I was surprised that they were so game for it, because sort of the reputation, right, is that they would be delicate and you don't want to hurt their feelings and we're all just here to have fun. But they insisted that we do death saves as normal. I warned them. I was like, that's cool. I'm all for it. That's actually one of my favorite things about D&D is that you don't have control over some of those things. But it does mean that sometimes, you know, you might have an ignominious death. And one of the players is like, well, what's an example of that? What do you mean, an uncool death? And I was like, well, think about the situation your character is in right now. You set off a glyph of warding that exploded in your face and caused part of this castle to collapse on you, and then a swarm of ravens descended to attack you for blowing up their tower. If you died right now, would that be a cool death, right? And they laughed and admitted that it wouldn't be, but they still wanted to go ahead with it. So that was what I thought was really cool, that like they understood death is kind of a bummer, agreed. They understood that the stakes are that they're gambling a little bit, right? You might die in an enjoyable situation, but it makes those fights more dramatic. Like the amount of buy-in that they have in this game is just really astounding to me. Where I think a lot of younger players that I've played with kind of want to have like an ironic distance to the game. They don't really care how it's actually done. They kind of want to mess with the machinery. This group wants to play the game as it's written, which I think is really fun and like refreshing after some of these other groups that I've had. Anyway, sorry, tangent over. I'm going to get some water because I am talking my ears off. But then I want to talk a little bit about kind of the next phase. Once they get to where they're going, if they go to the Night Keep, how do we transition them out? And I want to talk a little bit about Golden Fields and about Tribor. Vroom, vroom. So I'm going to put the loading screen back on. I'll be right back. And then when I return, we will talk a little bit more about next steps for this adventure. Don't go anywhere. Okay, nobody panic. I'm back. All right. So, as far as I can tell, going forward from here, there are two, well, I guess there's three potential ways forward. So, one way forward, right, once they see the town destroyed and the refugees kind of streaming up across the river towards them, they can do one of three things. They can lead the refugees to the Night Keep, which is, I think, probably what they would do. They can lead the refugees to one of the other two nearby communities, either Golden Fields or Tribor. Or, alternatively, they could just throw their hands up and say it's not our problem, right? Like, they could try to chase the Cloud Castle to get Beldroth back. They could do any number of things, right? So we kind of need to figure out the three options if they choose any one of those three. So if they if they lead the characters to Nightkeep, yeah, let's like write these down. I think Nightkeep is probably what they're gonna do, but I am almost always wrong about that. So option A, escort refugees to Nightkeep. Option B, escort refugees to nearby town. Either Golden Fields or Tribor. And option C, abandon refugees and follow the Flying Castle. The more I think about Beldroth getting captured, the more I think this is actually pretty likely that they might point the refugees in a direction, but then actually chase the castle. So what's interesting about that is that I don't necessarily know what to do there, but I know we have Zephyros, right? So yeah, okay, let's talk about these options. So if they escort the refugees to Nightkeep, I think this is kind of like the wisest choice. It's the Nightkeep is close by. It's like a day's walk away. They've just cleared it. They know there's not anything dangerous there. Wisest choice. Only a day's walk. No immediate dangers. A slight chance of getting lost in a scourge-infested swamp. But yeah, not very likely, but possible. So the conflict then, the plot has to come from the people here, right? So the conflict is all personal. What about Beldroth? What about Nestor? Does Lady Belladonna persuade the the refugees to follow her instead? Does Lannoy persuade Nestor to leave the party? Not Nestor, Lothar to leave the party, right? It's all these kind of like internal conflict, personal things, right? There's not like a big monster threat that attacks them. Once they get to Nightkeep and they kind of get the villagers installed there, then I think you have like a more formal plot, like arrive and basically say like, hello, I am the plot. What should you do? So I think you get a messenger, like 2 messengers arriving roughly at the same time. One from Tribor, one from Golden Fields. Each asking for aid from Dragon Daybreak. Dragon Daybreak is the name of the party, which was their own name. I did not come up with, but I think it's cool. I don't 100% understand it, but the party was excited about it, so I'm like, cool, Dragon Daybreak it is. And it's like a different format on most adventuring company names, right? You're either like the Verbers, right? Like the Blankers. So I have had one that's like the Reclaimers. Or you're like the Blank Company. So I've had one that's like the Nameless Company. But Dragon Daybreak is such a weird name that I was kind of instantly in love with it because it's just cool. Like breaks the general convention, right? Someone tried to like then do Dragon Nightfall, but I think the alliteration of Dragon Daybreak, I don't know, it's cool. So these 2 messengers arrive asking for aid. Both towns are under attack. Both towns are under attack from giants. Right, both towns are under attack. Both towns are under attack from giants. So hopefully, having seen the giant castle, it does sound like a metal band, I agree. Thank you, Cleveland, we're Dragon Daybreak. Hopefully seeing Nightstone be besieged by giants will make them want to jump in and help here. If it doesn't, then, we've got a problem there, too. I could probably do a Lady Belladonna adventure at that point, where she kind of, like, tries to go after Charlie, right? If I had to kind of fall back, like, if they ignore this, force the Lady Belladonna issue. And kind of get that wrapped up. issue. Okay. So then whichever one they pick here will eventually send them on to kind of option B. So if they choose to go to Goldenfield to Tribor, either way, there's some kind of an adventure. I think we'll probably do like a skill challenge to go overland, right? Like an overland travel skill challenge. Overland travel skill challenge. Yeah, like write 3 random encounters. Whenever the party gets a failure, they have a random encounter. So we should think of some random encounters they could get to on the way. And then like arrival in Tribor. Arrival in Goldenfields. So we could make one of, I want to talk about Zephyros for a second, because we could make one of the encounters be Zephyros, right? Could be like their thirding. If they fail 3 times, then Zephyros shows up and just carries them there. You know, like but that's kind of the opposite of a skill challenge, right? Because then the consequence of failure isn't that the consequence of failure is that like something comes along to help them. So it should be that they get lost, or that like the caravan like scatters or does whatever, right? So I don't know where Zephyros fits in exactly. I like the idea of challenging the notion that all giants are bad. You know what I mean? I like the idea that if they see these cloud giants attack, they see another cloud, they think, like, that's it, let's get him, and then it's revealed to be like, this guy's not bad. Why would you assume all giants are bad? So I like it. I don't want to lose it. We could just attach it to option C, but then again, there's only a 1/3 chance it shows up. Only 11-year-olds would think of it. I agree. We could attach it to option C, but then again, there's only a 33% chance it arrives. So we could put this in like success at the skill challenge could be that Zephyros shows up. But the problem with Zephyros showing up to give them a ride is it's very scripted. You know what I mean? It's like, you didn't actually get them there. This other thing came along. So I kind of think it is one of the random encounters, right? I kind of think he shows up and it seems like an attack, but he's actually not there to attack them. That's what I think. So let's come up with 3 random encounters. Random encounter number 1. Random encounter number 2. And random encounter number 3. So I would like to do Zephyros in there. He feels like the second one, right? A storm or cloud giant tower appears in the sky. The villagers panic, right? As it descends, the party presumably attacks it. They meet Zephyros. He offers them help. Will they accept it? So yeah, it's kind of about like looking past their prejudice, particularly if one of the characters' parents was abducted by cloud giants, right? It's going to immediately, like, they're going to want to fight, or get information or do whatever, right? I think that's cool. The cheesy prophecy route, like, I forget what you did there. I remember you talked about it a little bit. Like, he had some prophecy for them. Yeah, let me look up Zephyros and decide what I want to do. Zephyros. I love the hat on the wizard tower, but I worry that, I mean, maybe that's good. Maybe I should keep it because the conceit is that, like, it's a little clue that maybe he's not actually bad. Yeah, let's keep the hat because I mean it's just so charming. Zephyros descends from the 2nd floor. An eccentric cloud giant with windswept white hair. Their first encounter with a giant. Yeah. So this tower flies up on a billowy cloud 1,000 feet overhead, must be 100 feet tall. As the towers drift closer, stairs made of cloud begin to form underneath it and descend towards you. That's cool. He's cutting other plane spells to find a way to set things right, but he went crazy, yeah. Driven him insane on multiple occasions. Accentuated his eccentricity. Oof. Magical investigations led him to Nightstone. He had nothing to do with the Cloud Giant attack, and is horrified to learn of the damage his fellow giants caused. Holds small folk in higher regard than most giants. Cool. To him, a wide smile. Okay, so yeah, kind of the prophecy stuff, right? Like mysterious planar entities with which he has spoken. Convinced that the characters can help restore the ordning, Zephyros. So you could do a thing where, like, he's had some vision of them, right? I like the idea of, like, tying it to the blue dagger in some way. That he's seen visions of the blue dagger, seen visions of its bearer, you know, wreaking havoc, etc. Something like that. But, like, I like the idea of cluing the characters in right away when they meet Imrith. There's like a big glaring thing where it's like, what's that, right? So if she has it, that if they remember, like, look out for the blue dagger, it could be interesting. And then they have to yeah, I hate this. I hate the, like, if the characters ask Zephyros to take them somewhere other than Bryn Shander, Golden Fields, or Tribor, Zephyros, eccentric wizard that he is, gets a little befuddled and ends up taking them to one of these places by accident. Like, come on, that's some railroad shit where, like, the character's choices don't matter. Like, it's one thing if they can't persuade him to do it, but it's another thing to say, like, they successfully ask him to do this, he agrees, and then just takes them to one of the places. Like, you could maybe do a thing where he gets confused. Like, if they ask to go to Tribor, he takes them to Golden Fields. But, like, I don't know. Don't dishonor your players' wishes like that, you know. And this book has so much in it, right? Like, where would they go besides that? Unless they just try to go somewhere random that has nothing to do with anything, right? Like, I can understand that being a problem. But it just feels like, I don't know. That's railroady. Okay. So he's a giant. He's got stuff. They've got weird encounters. I think if they take Zephyros, then we skip over the third encounter, right? So another encounter I would like to do is I would like to do orcs on the road, because we've kind of set them up already. And I like the idea that maybe they can merge their caravans. You know, that, like, my thought was if the orcs aren't going to be in the Night Keep, then you could do a thing where they meet the orc tribe that's fleeing south, and it's maybe going to be a conflict, but they can resolve it. The problem is that if you do that, then it's like two encounters that are basically the same encounter. You know, where, like, you see a group of monsters or a monster that should ostensibly be a threat, but actually, you know, you can ally. And if we're going to have three of them, it's like you could maybe pace them out so that way it's like orcs, something else, Zephyros. But then Zephyros is the third option, and it's basically the reward for your failure. Where Zephyros is being the middle one, you know, is actually, if you turn it into a good, like, social interaction, can help you. It's like a fast track to the end. It's like an escape rope. So I don't know, like, orcs could be first, but then there's, like, no actual combat along the way. And I kind of feel like we have to have at least one fight that's, like, just unambiguously, like, monsters attack the party, right? What do? You could do giants again, right? You could be Ettins or hill giants or something, but we're going to do giants as we get to Tribor. And I like the idea of, like, orcs being displaced. The orcs could just attack the party, but, you know, like, then you're just immediately going to have them, like, fight them, be like, oh, orcs can't be trusted. Like, they sort of made an agreement with these adventurers, so it feels weird to have them. I like the idea of, like, the orcs having beef against the giants, and when the orcs learn, hey, we're going to go defeat giants that attack this town, some of the orc, like, warriors want to come with you. Like, that seems cool, because then now all of a sudden you have these allies. But, I mean, yeah, it could be that. It could be that it's, like, orc caravan, or orc refugees, like, fleeing south from the giants in the north. The orcs once again attempt to challenge the party. So I had them, like, try to do, like, a single combat thing to a Hraka, a trial by combat, If properly persuaded, the orcs will join forces with the party. With the party and and the people of Nightstone. People of Nightstone. Let's just do the joint forces with the people of Nightstone. It's cleaner. Yeah, it's something like that. I mean, again, it's not really a fight in the traditional sense, if that's what they want, you know. So then I think 3 definitely needs to be some kind of a fight. So what do we think is a good, like, monster encounter for the road? These characters are going to be in the sort of 2 to 3, like probably 1 to 2 level gap, so nothing crazy. My instinct is something like a bullet or an ankheg, you know, like just like a monster that appears and fights them. An ankheg might be a good call. The actual ankheg itself is pretty lame mechanically, so you could do kind of a Matt Colville souped up ankheg to make it a little bit more dynamic of a fight. That would be my instinct. Yeah, so I think it's just like a monster encounter that, like, it attacks the refugees, and it's even less about like it being a big threat and more about like of how dangerous it is out here. But that's like something about that being the 3rd encounter feels really weird to me. I think that's gonna be like the 1st encounter. Yeah, let's do it that way. I know it's a little weird because then it kind of rewards the party for failing. But let's say this is 2. And let's say this is 3. Like, I like the idea of it being dangerous out there. Right? Random encounter 1. And keg. Or maybe you do... Yeah, maybe you do this. I know I've moved these around a lot. Maybe you do random encounter 1 as the orcs, random encounter 2. I don't know that we're calling it a random encounter, but it's really like very scripted. And keg attack. So then if they have joined forces with the orcs, then the orcs can help them, right? Like, we worked together. Yeah, I like that. And Ankeg attacks the caravan. If orcs are around, they help the party. Redesign Ankeg to make it more challenging. For the party. Yeah, okay, cool. That's all good. All right, so let's look at Golden Fields and let's look at Tribor. We got about half an hour. I think we can get through this. I'm curious about option C because I feel like that's the sort of interesting one. I'm going to look up Golden Fields. So this is the one that's got like the treants and stuff. It's like a really big location. If I'm remembering correct. Yeah, it's a huge walled temple farm. So it's not actually a town. It's just like it's a temple to Shantea, the goddess of agriculture. The granary of the north, it's the only reason many northerners ever taste soft-fleshed fruit larger than bush berries. Waterdeep and its neighbors consume the temple's reliable output. It's run by this abbot. Let's just read it. Run by an abbot, it's a stronghold of the Emerald Enclave. Don't really care about them. Many stay for months at a time to help with the work and the vigilant defenses of the farm. Hired guards and adventurers patrol the walls and the land immediately around them. Inside the farm, young treants allied with the Emerald Enclave hide within stands of trees. I like that. Ready to animate trees to repel invaders. More than 5,000 people. Okay, so it is pretty big. 5,000 people live and work in Golden Fields year-round, farming more than 20 square miles of tillage in gangs of hardworking gardeners. Okay, so this is a city. The sprawling temple farm is built on higher ground than the surrounding fields, and it's enclosed on all sides by a wall of mortared stone. So I see. It's like fields in every direction, and then like the temple in the middle. The outer wall is 60 feet high, and 30 feet wide. The wall is built out at several points, spaced at least a mile apart, with stone pagodas and barracks at those locations. These watch posts have unobstructed views of the surrounding countryside. The outer wall is in need of repair in many places. Time and weather have eroded some of the mortar, creating ruts between the stones that can serve as handholds and footholds. Scaling the walls requires a successful DC-15. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. The entrance is a large gatehouse. So this is very tactical about like how it's set up. Dirt roads crisscross the interior of the compound, providing passage between and through the fields. Roads run along the inside of the wall, connecting the various watch posts. Blah, blah, blah. Lots of orchards. Golden fields. Workers live in a small town situated near the abbey. See, because, like, yeah, they say it's got 5,000 people who live here. But then it's like, there's a small town where all the people live. You know what I mean? Like, that seems like it's at odds. Maybe this is just, like, so much. The farms are so big that, yeah, it must be that. Okay, so locations, sure, all the things. Earth Mother's Bounty. Town. Was there human commoners? Yeah, Liferlas is the awakened tree. Okay. It's an abbey. Harvest Home. Funny. Harvest Home was the name of one of my fake months in the Kyrosha, which is the world that we use in the show in XP. Golden Gulp Brewery. Great. Forgotten Realms, everybody. So, okay, attack on Golden Fields. Go, the stealth-styled chief of the Hill Giants, is driven off her female rivals and conquered their husbands. Now she tasks her mates with collecting food for her voracious appetite. Two of these big dummies, Lob and Ugg, wandered the hills and valleys south of Grudhaug, the den of Guz's tribe. They eventually blundered into the Forlorn Hills, and a few weeks ago stumbled upon a gang of bugbears and goblins. Goblinoids took Lob and Ugg about a large farm on the far side of the Desserin River. Okay, they attacked it, waded across the river and hurled rocks at Golden Fields, pounding its outer wall and alarming its residents. Alright, they get attacked, or they're repelled. To wonder whether the next attack would come. This attack hasn't changed the mood among the residents. Great stock in the strength of their outer militias and defenses. Spent the next month lost in the hills. But the big farm, she dispatched a horde of giants, ogres, bugbears, and goblins to pillage it. Lob and Ugg leading the way. Lob and Ogg got lost in the hills and blundered into a Copper Dragon's territory. Boy, this is like so complicated. Okay. So then the bugbears took over and led the remnants of the horde to Golden Fields. So they kind of lost. The idea is the giants lost their position. But this is still a huge number, right? Because they want you to do that thing where you play NPCs or whatever, right? Climb over the walls in the dead of night. They slip into the wheat fields in search of food and plunder, realizing the most edible food is stored in cellars under the watch posts along the walls. As the intruders quietly prowl Golden Fields in search of food, the 6 hill giants stand behind a wall with open sacks, waiting to catch whatever food the goblins and bugbears toss over the wall. Meanwhile, the remaining 6 ogres and 30 goblins lurk in the darkness outside the wall. Okay. So this is all very... yeah, very specific. I don't want to give them NPCs. No thanks. So here's the deal. If you're doing it where they go to Golden Fields because they're summoned, right? Then Golden Fields has presumably already fallen. Like, maybe it's still being attacked, but I think the idea is that, like, it's not like you were there when they first attack, right? It's like you are responding to it. And I think even if you don't know it's under attack, marching to Golden Field and discovering it has also been attacked by giants, I think is stronger than flashing there and playing some character. So, I mean, like, you could make it a thing where you encounter the refugees from Golden Fields, like, on the way. Yeah, so what is the connective tissue from this to the rest of the game? So, Golden Fields quests. Who survives the attack in Golden Fields, the party receives a quest and gains a particular reward for completing the quest. So there's different people. There's this Shalvis Martholio. Escort him to Barge Right, then happen to his boss. So they get little mini quests for each person. I see. Okay, that's a lot. Woof. Okay, Miro Selbrin, Maxine Drothkala. Some of these names. And then Tribor. So this one I know. This one has the like the piece of the fire giants thing, the Vodinode or whatever, buried here. But what I don't understand is like, what do these attacks have to do with the rest of the story? Let me keep going and see. Attack on Tribor. Rods of the Vodindod. Vodindod. I can never say that. All these quests. And then what? They just advance to 6th level? Ugh. Oh, that's so lazy. I mean, it's so much information. It's just like, how could you possibly... The idea of like playing the characters is sort of cool, but I don't want to give out new character sheets and say, okay, this is who you are now, especially these like new players. So in the Old Tower section, sort of a setting with 3 encounters that help propel the story forward. The expedite travel and Harshnag introduces them to a giant they can meet. But like, what does that have to do with... Guided by... So they do that, and then a giant... Like, what? I'm obviously like jumping around, which was not helping my like understanding of this section. I see. So they go do some of these quests that they get for each one of the characters that survive, and then at some point during that quest, they're approached by Harshnag. Okay. That seems a little goofy. But, I mean, the notion of, like, they save Golden Fields, and then they get a bunch of quests as a result, and because you're not doing all of those things, right? Like, you're just doing the one. Yeah, okay, so let's do this. Let's move on from now. For now, I think we have these 3 random encounters figured out. I think that, like, the conceit that, like, the hill giants have taken over the town, and the party must sneak in to retrieve something. It makes me think of the greenstones, perhaps greenstones buried under the soil. Yeah. So the greenstones are in Curse of Strahd, and the idea is that they're magic items that allow the Wizard of Wine's winery to like grow and flourish and all that stuff. So I like the idea of the people of Golden Fields have been like kicked out. You know, the giants have taken over, the hill giants have taken over, they're just like eating through their entire store, but they weren't able to exhume the greenstones in time, and so this treant character who's now like taken over the people of Golden Fields tells them like, hey, can you get in there and get those stones? Because we can go make Golden Fields somewhere else, right? So that's that, and I think this one is the fire giants have taken over, have begun excavating for the Vonindode, and the people of the town want the characters to sabotage the thing they're pulling out, the item they're exhuming. Right, if they can destroy it, then it can't be used, right? Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so we have 15 minutes. I want to do, and that we'll design those later. Like, that's not going to be next session. So I'm not too worried about it. Let's talk about what happens if they choose to follow the castle, because that's one thing I don't necessarily know. I kind of like the idea that they like, so it's like a skill challenge, right? Like, how do you follow this thing? To follow the castle wherever it goes. And it's obviously very difficult, right? Like, it shouldn't be easy to follow this like massive flying castle through the wilderness, but that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, like, where do they go? Where do they take it? The idea, I think, is that they don't go anywhere, right? That the cloud giants just like live up in the clouds, and they just kind of like travel around. So Yeah, I think it's cool to me if they kind of go through a couple of different locations on their way. And you kind of throw quests at them while they do that, right? So we can take some of these locations from the Frozen North or the Savage Frontier or whatever it's called and use those. Hey, David, if you're still hanging out in the chat, I have another question for you. What would you say, how many of these like random locations did you end up using? Did you just kind of like transfer immediately from Golden Fields into Harshnag? Or I think you did Golden Fields, right? Into Harshnag? Or did you have them kind of run around a little bit? Like, are there any particularly juicy locations that I should be using? Because there's just so many of them, right? And there's like this cool table of them encountering things. I mean, maybe we could just do this. We could just have them like they run after the castle, right? And as they move along, they kind of run into these random wilderness encounters. You know, like if I pick Battlefield, what's on that? Carrion Birds, Cloud Castle. There's no immediate threat. Anywhere in the Evermoors. Okay, home to 1d6 neutral good cloud giants are searching for ancient ruins built by their ancestors. Dig site, yeah, dig site, right? Like these kinds of things. You could just do that. Bands of elves, fire giants, food hunters. You know, you could just kind of have them run around and encounter things for a while until they eventually lose the castle. But it feels like you could have them get to some locations, right? Like they, because I think the castle maybe just like goes on a loop. It just like circles around in the sky, and they can follow it to see if they can eventually get their hands on it. But they would need some way to fly up to it, and it's never going to come down unless it eventually does. So I think it's like a skill challenge where as they continue to follow the castle, they keep encountering things. So it's actually like a string of interconnected skill challenges. Yeah, a string of interconnected skill challenges. To follow the castle on its circular route through the region. The problem is that, like, how could they possibly, like, wouldn't it eventually sort of like outpace them? You know? Maybe it moves really slowly. Maybe it's not that fast. So, because they're going to have to stop and rest, right? When they rest, the castle's going to gain a bunch of ground on them, but they could still potentially, like, spot it and catch up with it over the course of the day if it moves really slowly. Yeah, so the castle moves slowly, but it never stops moving. As they travel, the castle flies in a big circle, visiting the same few locations over the course of a year or 6 months or something, over the course of a year. As the characters follow, they encounter random monsters and visit, 6 locations in the north, learning more about what's happened, you know what I mean? Like, and where they're going. Because then you could theoretically, like, pluck plot lines from the Golden Boar and Tri-Fields, from Golden Fields and Bryn Shander and those things, right? So yeah, let's look at some of these quests. Attack on Bryn Shander quest. So Algrek Brighthelm wants to home in favor with Sheriff Selva, unwilling to leave her post. She asks the characters to meet with one or more representatives of the Brighthelm clan in Ironmaster and ask her clan folk to send reinforcements to Bryn Shander. She warns the characters that the dwarves of Ironmaster don't allow non-dwarves inside their lands. So one of the encounters could be that you pass by Ironmaster, right? And you can't get through because they, like, don't want you to, you know? Okay, yeah, so they pass through a number of locations and get embroiled in a number
number of plot lines. Wherever they pass, the world is shaken by the actions of giants. Like every single location they come to is having some kind of giant problem, right? Like these dwarves are having trouble with frost giants, and these elves are having trouble with fire giants. Like they're consistently having giants be the problem, right? So yeah, you just go through each one of these ones and find ones that it's like easier to stick giants into and make those be the locations that they come across. So that'll take a lot of work, but if they pick option C, then I'll know in advance and I'll have a couple of weeks and I can kind of prepare that. Okay, so this is one of those fork in the road things. Most likely they're going to either go to Nightkeep or go to one of these towns, and it'll be a little bit more easy to contain, a little easier to contain. But I think this at least gives me enough to prep immediately in the aftermath of the dungeon they're on, that I'll know the general direction, like the general trajectory of the campaign from that point. Cool. Okay, I think that is it for today, everybody. I appreciate you coming and bearing with my crazy homebrew of Storm King's Thunder. But I think it's going to be cool. I like these kind of big, branching, open-ended scenarios because it kind of shows you how much freedom the characters have to dictate the shape of the campaign. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out. I'll be back next Tuesday with another Adventure Prep stream. I'll probably be streaming on Thursday. We'll do some video games on my Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/xpwebseries, which you can go follow. And I will be, otherwise I'll be hanging out on Twitter. If you like my content, you can find me at xpwebseries on Twitter. I'm always talking about dwarves and adventure design and campaigns and dungeon mastery. If you really like me, you can find me at my website, ProDM.net. That's pro-dm.net. And you can hire me to run adventures for you, just like these adventures that I'm running for clients right now. So thank you so much for coming and hanging out today. I'll be back soon. There should be a new Thoughts from the Table video that actually went live during this live stream. So go check that out. It's a really fun one about ludonarrative dissonance, which is a big fancy video game term that I try to employ in my D&D games whenever I can. Thanks for all your help and all your ideas. I will talk to you guys soon. Until then, happy adventuring.